Bring in some of the custodies here. Some of my companions, to be exact. Do it now.
Are you sure?
Do it now.
Very well, just a moment, my lord. Well, here they are, my lord. Some of your other companions. Sorry.
Holy shit. What in the name of terror on fucking roller skates is this?
So I was paid to take a look at Ultramarines, a Warhammer 40k movie. Well, I'm sure you all at least heard of 40k at some point. It is a very popular tabletop game spawned from Games Workshop after they decided, hey, what if we put orcs in space? And they built an entire franchise out of that. I played it a few times a couple of years ago and it's a pretty good game. But if you think trading card games are expensive, you are in for a rough awakening. So I never really got into the game itself, though some of the video games are pretty good. Also there are the pen and paper RPGs, you know, stuff like D&D. By the way, if you happen to like these kinds of games, I would really recommend to check out Dark Heresy. It is a pretty complex system, but once you get the hang on it, it's a lot of fun. Now, one thing you really have to know is that there's a shit ton of lore surrounding 40k, and an amount of novels detailing it that makes the Star Wars Expanded Universe look like a joke. The lore is pretty deep and complex, and I'm rather fascinated by it myself, though I am a rather casual fan. Most of what I know thanks to a friend who is a walking database for 40k facts. I did do some occasional wiki readings though to get in character for Dark Heresy and Deathwatch. If you want a good introduction, I would recommend to check out If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. It is somewhat of a parody series, but it is a great entry point as detail a lot of stuff that happened in the world of 40k. And now about the movie. You know, frankly I feel a bit bad for saying it, but this movie is garbage. Yet I don't like calling it garbage. I mean, it is basically just a fan movie. Sorta. Codex Pictures was an actual studio and got the license from Games Workshop to do the movie. Not only that, the screenplay was written by Dan Abnett, a rather renowned comic artist and bestseller author, and most of his bestsellers are, you guessed it, 40k novels. He wrote a shitload of them, and as far as I know, they are all pretty popular. So what I'm saying is, if you want one guy to write you a 40k story, you cannot ask for anyone better. But the studio was basically just founded to produce this one movie, and it dissolved a few years after it was finished without producing anything else. Judging by the animation, the movie obviously didn't have that much of a budget. So yeah, even after all that, I would still consider this a fan movie, and I do get the feeling that it was produced with a lot of passion. And you know how it is. You see that passion in the project, but it turned out to be really bad. You can sorta appreciate the effort that went into it, but you cannot really enjoy it. That are more or less my feelings on this movie. Though, that being said, it is probably the best Smurf movie that has ever been produced. Okay, I might have to explain this one. This movie is about a group of Ultramarines. Ultramarines are a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, commonly better known as Space Marines. Space Marines are genetically enhanced super soldiers of humanity. Like really, we could spend an entire day discussing how awesome they are. Captain America has nothing on them. There are several different chapters of Space Marines, and the Ultramarines are basically the poster boys of 40k. To the charging of many fans and many cynics consider them the Mary Sues of the 40k verse, since they always come out on top somehow and get way more focus than every other chapter combined. Personally, I'm more of an Imperial Fist guy, mostly because I played one in a few sessions of Deathwatch, but that's besides the point. Now, since the Ultramarines wear blue armor, they were nicknamed Smurfs by those who dislike them, and it probably doesn't help that there are some of them that wear white helmets, and we even get some Papa Smurfs among them. In any case, let's talk about the plot. The group of Smurfs consists of mostly fresh recruits, their commander, and an old veteran who tells the other Smurfs how green they are all the time and how bad war is and stuff. While the group of recruits are of course a bunch of glory hounds that can't wait to prove themselves. They get the chances as they get a distress call. Apparently an operation base of my boys, the Imperial Fists, has been attacked and they are supposed to check the situation. Now apparently the Imperial Fists were supposed to guard some shrine, but frankly that doesn't make any sense for them to be there as far as I get it, but I'm not gonna go too much into detail here. The movie has a lot of lore problems, which is rather odd considering who wrote it. Most of these mistakes or plot holes are only really noticeable if you are familiar with the material. Frankly, I don't think that I would do a good job elaborating on most of it, so I will mostly judge this movie on its own. So I'm just gonna ignore hiccups like this for now, just be aware that they exist. In any case, they go to the planet where the shrine is located and find that all the Imperial Fists were slaughtered. They get attacked by a bunch of Chaos Space Marines, that are Space Marines that have been corrupted by the evil forces of Chaos, and a demon. They manage to fight them off, but they lose some men in the process. Among them, their commander and our protagonist has to take on the mantle of leadership. You might have noticed that I don't use any names. That's because the characters are all pretty bland and I forgot the names as soon as I was done watching this movie. Sure, I can look them up, but why bother? It boils down to rookies go on first mission, everything goes wrong, rookie protagonist is in charge now due to plot convenience, while the old veteran is complaining the entire time. Yeah, I think these are all rather familiar story beats we all have seen before. Now they manage to find out two survivors of the Imperial Fist who protect a sacred book. After they discussed what happened, the Smurfs agree to help them, some begrudgingly as they don't quite trust the Imperial Fist as there is a chance that they are corrupted or that they are actually demons in disguise, which, to be fair, is a rather real threat in 40k. They want to return to their ship but get attacked by a huge force of Chaos Space Marines. Since they are outnumbered, they slowly get overwhelmed, but then their commander, who supposedly died earlier, suddenly shows up and helps them to escape. They return to their ship and are on their way home when the commander shares a suspicion that the Imperial Fist might actually be tainted by Chaos. So they go check on them and they use their standard, which ignites when Chaos is nearby, to verify that at least one of them is a demon, and the commander kills the Imperial Fists on the spot. But the standard is still burning, which irritates everyone, even though it actually stopped burning for a second there, though I suppose that was an animation oversight. The reveal is of course that the captain actually was killed in combat and replaced by a demon, and he starts killing people now that the cat is out of the bag. He reveals his plan to infiltrate the homeworld of the Ultramarines. Our protagonist manages to kill him however by using the Thunder Hammer, a sacred weapon that has been introduced in the opening scene of the movie, where they explained that one of the recruits might be worthy to use it one day. Well, as it turns out, that day came sooner than expected. He kills the demon and we get a recreation of that opening shot. Now, here I want to address my friend the editor. Ed reviewed this movie a while ago and I would really recommend to check out his review, especially since he actually knows a lot more about 40k lore than I do and explains all the little details this movie screwed up. But he really complained about the ending scene and didn't really see the purpose of it. Ed, this is what TV tropes calls a book ending. A pretty common writing tool, and it is often used to either highlight what changed over the course of a story or to emphasize that things are still somewhat the same. In the case of this movie, it is rather obvious. Our hero started as glory-seeking greenhorns that listened to the speech, but now our protagonist is the experienced veteran who gives the speech, which is meant to illustrate his growth as a character. In addition, it also shows that life goes on as usual and that there is a repeating cycle with the introduction of new recruits. So yeah, I don't think that this scene is pointless, but I can understand that some might consider it a bit cliché. In any case, you're welcome, Ed! Okay, besides that, one thing that really bothers me is the reveal that the captain was actually a demon after he returned. I don't mind the plot point, but since they use a standard to reveal it, it makes for a rather obvious plot hole. It is established early on in the movie that the standard automatically ignites itself when Chaos is nearby, but it didn't ignite when the Ultramarines first met the Imperial Fist, and they spent some time with them alone until they encountered Chaos. So that should tick them off that they cannot possibly be demons. Even worse, we can see the commander near the standard after he returns multiple times and it doesn't ignite. They even sat down together in a rather small shuttle without that thing igniting. They should have noticed that the captain is a demon before they even boarded that shuttle, so yeah, that one doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, besides that obvious plot hole, I have to say that the story is at least competently written. Sure, the story beats are rather familiar and you can see most twists from a mile away. I mean, the reveal that the captain is actually a demon in disguise is not exactly a surprising twist, but it is a serviceable story and it is actually well paced, and while I consider the characters rather bland and forgettable, they are a rather faithful representation of Space Marines. The dialogue is for the most part also rather well written, but in the end it is not much more than mediocre, which might be enough to carry this movie if the characters would have been more memorable or if the animation was any good. Well, and speaking of which, no it's not. I mean, the action scenes are at least somewhat fun to watch. In particular, it is kinda awesome to see Space Marines and their iconic weapons and actions, so the fight scenes are somewhat worthwhile to watch for fans, but that's about it. What makes this movie in particular hard to watch are the facial animations. Well, the faces in general, even when they don't move. They are ugly as hell and look like plastic. Right into the uncanny valley there. I mean, it might sound weird, but I think this movie would have been way better received if the Space Marines would wear their helmets for the entirety of the movie, like all of it. It might be a stretch, but 40k is perhaps the one franchise where you could get away with that. The armors are actually pretty well designed and look awesome, especially since they all look slightly different, which would probably be enough to tell them apart when you cover up their faces. And I think also the backgrounds and scenery deserve some praise. Some of them are really detailed, in particular the ship of the Space Marines captures a mix of sci-fi and gothic architecture pretty well. And even if you can describe the planet they spent most of this movie on best as a wasteland, it really captures the gritty atmosphere of 40k and gives the whole thing a bit of a horror movie vibe, which is actually pretty appropriate. So yeah, there are at least some good things to say about this movie, but my point still remains, it is pretty bad. Skip it and rather get yourself a copy of Space Marines the video game, cause that one is actually fun to play. But what about you? Did you watch this movie? Did you like it? What do you think of 40k? Let me know in the comments below. I am Tricky Fox. Stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes you can be too smart for you're